Hello, and welcome to my latest Patreon video. This is like the penultimate video in the series for the Flesh Terrors, and in this video we're going to be working on all the finishing off all the details, so the pouches, the grenades, and things like the true metallic metal, which is going to be really good fun. You'll notice that I've done a head. The head has been done predominantly black. It's a black helmet. It will need glazing down a tiny little bit, but it was done the same way as I did the shoulder pads, and then it's got a little bit of true metallic on the rebreather parts on the side of the head, and then the mask is just done with a little bit of bone. So you'll see on the wet palette we've got 6 paints on the wet palette. The bottom left is Abaddon Black. We're using Abaddon Black as a bit of a contrast glaze, so that's quite watered down. That's about 4 parts water to 1 part paint. Everything else on there is about 50-50 paint to water. So going right from the Abaddon Black, we have Lupercal Green, then Warpstone Glow, and then above those we have Mournfang Brown, XV88 and Xandri Dust. So because these are really watered down paints, then it means we can build up some texture and some highlights very quickly, very easily, without kind of without worrying about putting too heavy a marker down. So you'll see here we're kind of swapping between the Mournfang Brown and the XV88 to build up a bit of a highlight across all these edges. We're trying to keep the highlights towards the top edge on these small pouches, and then the large pouch down there, because of the way that the light is going to be landing, it's going to be predominantly lit towards the bottom of the large pouch. So that's why we were building it up down towards the bottom down there as well. When we're doing this, it's really important that you have a very sharp point on your brush. So you don't have to use a brand new brush, but use a brush that's got a very good point to it. This is a size 1 Da Vinci brush. You can go down to a size 0 if you want. It just takes a little bit longer to get the paint down. I'm taking very little paint onto the brush because it's watered down. It soaks it up quite well. If it does look like it's a little bit overfilled, then I will just wipe it up. You'll see me wipe it on my finger if I do overfill it a little bit. But the Mournfang Brown is the darkest colour that we're using, and because it is watered down, it does dry a little bit darker as well, which is really cool. The straps here, because they'd already had the initial highlight kind of sketched on, and they're so thin, the main thing that we're looking for here is just a nice sharp highlight on the top edge, so there, and that's the only kind of piece that we need to worry about on those. The contrast on those will really sell where the light direction is coming from, as you can see. And then the little clasp underneath as well. So the brown, I was trying to keep the browns as dark as I could on this. I didn't want to go too pale, because brown is a similar kind of tone towards the red, so I didn't want it to be overpowering as a colour or as a tone either. So occasionally you'll see me go and grab some black just to glaze some of the shadows in again, to keep that contrast going. The contrast of this model, as we've been saying, is very important. I'm trying to get a really kind of grim dark look to this, and you can see me kind of nipping back to the black and the Mournfang Brown now, just to kind of darken down some of these layers. Same on this back panel here, just making sure that the edges are sharp, but as soon as we do that edge highlight there, we've got to make sure that we are working towards the light volume of that panel as well, and the same with this scabbard here. Now the scabbard we're going to paint the scabbard and this large pouch here the same way as we did that larger pouch on the front side, so the lower side of or lower part of the panel, if you like, is going to be a little bit brighter. And then obviously the top edge here, we don't have to take that one too bright because obviously we're going to have a backpack there as well, so it's going to be casting a bit of a shadow on there, but you've got to have some sort of detail in the shadows, so that's why we're just adding that little bit of a highlight in there. Putting this Mournfang brown right down towards the base. Again, the thinness of the paint here, and also we're doing a little bit of wet blending on the model as well. So because the paint's thin, it's not drying particularly quickly once it goes onto the model. So if you can work quickly, and you can see how quickly I'm working on this, I'm not trying to be as precise maybe as we were doing when we were doing the armor. The leather is obviously it's going to have a little bit more of a texture around. So we can keep it a little bit more relaxed, and use the texture from applying the paint and the kind of that scribble motion from the brush to add a little bit of interest to these very, very quickly and easily. And just ticking the all the kind of the small edges, and the kind of the pouch sections on this, because they're very small, the little clasps, they can be used really well to kind of show off that contrast as well. So because they're small, we can put really, really fine edge highlights on those. So the grenades which we're doing here, I had a little bit of a change of heart on these. They were grey originally. I was if you remember when we did the initial sketch of all the highlights and everything, they were grey. I've changed my mind, and just to add a little bit of colour and also to tie in the green lenses that we did on the helmet, I've just decided to do the grenades this green colour as well. So this is Lupercal green that's going on first. Unfortunately it doesn't cover very well, but you can almost kind of use that to your advantage and build up a couple of layers to keep that contrast going. Again, you want to have like a hint of green in the shadows, and then the nice sharp warpstone glow on the top. Just pay attention to how much paint I'm actually getting on my brush. I've got very, very little. I've got just kind of stroking the tip into the paint and then dragging it out through the wet palette to keep it thin as well, to keep that paint thin. So the highlights for these, you want to keep them towards the top edge, and you don't want to start highlighting underneath, and you don't really want to highlight the bottom edge either. So keep the highlights towards the top edge of the grenades. We're going to go back when we start doing the metallics and add like the pins. Just highlight up the pins for them as well. So if you start highlighting the underneath, it's going to lose that light direction that we've been working so hard on this model. And the true metallic, when we start working on the true metallic, that's going to sell and push the light direction even further as well. And you can use the warpstone glow, because the warpstone glow doesn't cover very well. You can use the warpstone glow as almost like a 3-stage highlight, if you like. So you can put a thin layer on it, and then build it up in 3 coats, getting smaller and smaller with each one. So you can, if you wanted to, you could just use warpstone glow on this. But just for speed, I've got that Lupercal green in there first, which again, because it's watered down, it covers over the black in a very translucent manner, so you get a very dark green coming through anyway. And the same with the back sides of the grenades. We're just highlighting the top edge, trying to leave the bottom edges highlight free. Again, that strong light direction is going to be key on small details like this. back to the other strap. Again, because it's purely because of the size of these, we don't have, there's not very much space in there to get any sort of transitional blend going on, so we can use a nice sharp highlight, but notice the highlight doesn't go all the way around, it's just focused across the center. So the center of that strap is going to be where it's going to be focusing the light, and the light is going to be catching more. So this Sandry dust highlight is just focused across the center, and these little tick highlights here now, these are the ones which I was talking about, where we can start selling that contrast a little bit more as well. The little highlight ticks on the straps and things. Just adding, so that was just adding a little bit of Mornfang brown to the top of those pouches, because I noticed that they were still black. So even though they are in shadow, they're going to need some sort of detail in there. So I just scribbled on a little bit of Mornfang brown to add some interest. Now this is a great example of kind of wet blending and scratching these colours together. So we want the highlight down towards the base of this scabbard. So we've added some Mornfang brown in there. This is the XV88, and then we're going to go back to the Mornfang brown and start pulling it down into that while it's still a little bit wet. And then we can scribble, and it's still very, very light. I'm not scrubbing. You can notice there's not a lot of tip. There's not a lot of movement in the tip. There's no tip displacement or anything. It's just a very, very light scribble, but it does push the paints together a little bit when we're kind of wet blending on the model. It's a very effective and quick way of doing it. Now those edge highlights, I'm working really quick on this. Those edge highlights on that scabbard, they're one of those things that sell the blend. So once you've got that transition from the Mornfang brown down through the XV88, you can then sell it with a nice, neat, crisp edge highlight. And the same with these as well. Really, this is the Sandry dust. Now, looking at this, once I'd finished it, I might go back and just add one more, maybe a bleached bone highlight to these, just to pale out the Purity Seal scripts just a fraction more, just so that it looks a little bit different to the pouches. Those little tick highlights again on the straps underneath the grenades, really important little details to help. The little details like this, they don't just help sell the contrast, but they also make the model look a little bit more finished. The more kind of tiny little ticks and highlights that you can do across models really helps make the model look finished, and just gives it a little bit of interest as well. Now this is just before we're going to start doing the true metallic on the blade. So this is the Abaddon Black, which we said that we had mixed up as a glaze. So this glaze is, like I said, it's about 5:1 water to paint, and all I'm doing is I'm dragging this now down to the shadows. I want one highlight across the centre of this blade to kind of accentuate the light direction on this. I do paint true metallic metals a little bit in the same way as non-metallic, just using metallic paints. So anything that we can use to increase that contrast and lessen that gloss level of the metallic paints is key, which is where these glazes come from. When you put a glaze over a metallic, it just knocks a little bit of the gloss level back a fraction, and then allows whatever highlight you then put on the metallic, it allows that to show a little bit more. So again, we're just adding these Abaddon Black glaze into all the kind of the recesses. Well, not the recesses, but the lower edges. So we're going to be highlighting up the edges which are facing upwards. The shoulder pad's going to be an easy one to see because there's already a highlight on the shoulder pad itself, that grey one that we added. So we can follow that down and add this in the same position for the edge. So you'll notice we've got two new paints on the a little bit of fluff on the blade. we've got 2 new paints on the wet palette there. We've got Model Air Chrome, which I'm just taking a little bit off there, and then next to that we've got the Scale Colour Black Metal. Now these are my 2 favourite metallics, and you can see that these are the only 2 metallics that I use on this as well. So the Model Air Chrome, we're going to use that to place the top highlight. So this is where the top highlight is going to be. We want it right in the centre of the blade. That's where the light is going to be hitting, and then we can build on that. So you've seen me edge highlight. I just run an edge highlight down the side as well, and then we're going to go back in and get a little bit of the black metal and then pull it out across the blade as well. So this is a little bit of a kind of a cheat of a loaded brush and a bit of wet blending as well. And the gun barrel's hiding that one, but you'll be able to see what I do in a second on the other side. So we've got a little bit of chrome on the tip of the brush, black metal in the rest, and then as we drag and we get harder and harder, you can see I'm just pressing harder and harder. I'm getting more black metal out of the brush, and it's just a really easy way of getting that nice smooth transition, and then just going back in with pure black metal towards the edges. Now what we can do with this as well, we can glaze over this with some Abaddon black as well. Now it's obviously catching the light a lot, but if you check the photo that I've put up along with this as well, you'll be able to see how it works. And occasionally when it's I do turn the exposure down a little bit right towards the end so you can see, but if you pay attention when it doesn't glare, you'll be able to see these transitions a little bit easier. So there's the chrome right in the centre, and then just pulling a little bit of black metal from the back of the brush onto the model, going to grab a little bit more, and just keep building that up and pulling it in. And then we'll do exactly the same on the top side. Place that black metal down there. I do this the opposite way now. So I've already placed the black metal down, and then get a bit of chrome on the tip, apply it to the highlight, and then as that chrome works off the brush, the only thing that's left on the brush is black metal. So you can then work that into the shadows as the transition gets smoother. So that's the transition on the blade. Hopefully you can just about see there. You can see some striations coming in. We're now going to grab some of the Abaddon black, and we want to stay away from the chrome highlight here. So we're going to drag the glaze from just before the chrome down into the shadows, just to help that soften that transition across the black metal. The Scale Colour Black Metal. It's a gorgeous colour. It's a really good cover. The Scale Colour metallics are very good. They do cover very well. It's one of the reasons why I like using these 2, because Model Air Chrome as well covers very well. Just adding some highlight ticks on there, and then we'll do the same. So we've got a little bit of black metal on the back of the brush again, chrome on the tip, and then we're just pulling that and softening it off, and just that highlight on the inside edge now all the way up. The edges should always be highlighted to the top highlight, because edges will always catch the light more, so you can always do that. Now we're going to do it on the shoulder pad as well, so that is the same angle from where we get the highlight the little circle highlight that we did on the shoulder pad. Now it's a little bit more difficult to do that kind of wet blending loaded brush style on this, so this is pure black metal which we're just pulling out, and then we get it. It's a little bit watered down. It is a little bit watered down, but we do kind of pull it up nice and soft. We don't. It's really important that you really do not have very much paint on your brush when you're doing this, because these 2 paints make a very good metallic mark. The Model Air Chrome in particular, it's a really nice paint when you've got that nice soft satin finish of a metallic that you get when you've applied that glaze beforehand, and then when you can then build it up, and if you can just tick the edge highlights on with the chrome, it does sell the metallic really well. It's a nice, easy, kind of almost a cheap way of doing it. There we go. So pulling those transitions across again. It is a very simple way of doing things like this. Just those two paints, and you can mix those two paints on the brush and on the model. Just make sure that the chrome is always at the highest point, because occasionally when you're pulling the colours together, occasionally they do get a little bit more dull. So just make sure if they do get a bit more dull, just go and grab a tiny speck of that chrome again and just put it in at the top. The belt buckle here, so the belt buckle being very dark and being a smaller item, we can get away with doing some very small highlights on this. The only larger highlight you'll see me add is on the top right hand corner of the belt buckle. Again, that's nearer the light source, so remember the light direction that we're trying to get on this. And that's the larger highlight that I've just added there that you can't see because it's behind the gun. Sorry about that. There you go. So you can see that larger highlight from Model Air Chrome just on that top corner. And the black metal's just been pulled together again. So you can just highlight around the edges. The top edge of all of these is just chrome, and you can see that just finishes off everything. Just adding the little buckles on the pouches. Little touch. You'll remember that when we were highlighting these as well, we kept those buckles or the buttons or whatever they are. We kept those dark as we were highlighting around, so we kept those free. The pins on the grenades, because the wire on these is very thin, we don't need any black metal on these. All we need to do is just tick them with some chrome on the upper edge, and then that will sell the idea that they are metallic. Because the wire is so thin, it's going to be a very concentrated highlight, so it's going to be a very small highlight anyway. So to keep that contrast, we don't need to add any more in there. If we did add some black metal or some darker metallic on those, then it wouldn't really work as well. You won't be able to see the highlight. It would just kind of all blend together a little bit more. So to keep the contrast, we keep that nice and high, just like one single tick. And then the same with the little skull on the chest piece. That was just a tick on the top, and then all of these kind of little details. Now this is all just Model Air Chrome. It's such a nice paint to use as well. It goes on beautifully. But this is just all the top edges, just ticking all the top edges on all of this, making sure that any edge that is facing upwards, even like the front of the barrel or the front of the magazine, which is facing a little bit further forwards, anything like that, we can very simply just tick that edge, and it helps sell that light coming in the right direction. There's the front of the magazine, anything that's facing upwards, and then the gun barrel as well. Just do the top, leave the bottom half of that circle, leave that a darker colour. But we can just tick the top half of that circle from the barrel. It's very difficult when you're painting to keep it in shot, as you can see. I apologise for that. I will make sure that I'm paying more attention next time. As always, I always seem to keep saying this. I need to do need to get better at that. Apologies for that, guys. So here I just wanted to add a little bit more of a highlight across the top of the barrel. So because it's a face that's facing, sorry, it's because it's a surface that's facing upwards, I wanted to add a bit more of a highlight as if it's catching some light here. So this is all model air chrome, trying to get a nice smooth light across here, and we're going to have it at a 45-degree angle on that top, well, it's actually the bottom corner on that. So we've blocked it in there, and then we're going to get some black metal, some of the scale colour black metal, and just pull the corner down, so you can see that 45 degrees is now being created there. And just softening that out, so that you can see the highlight a little bit more. It adds a bit of interest to the gun as well, because otherwise the gun does tend to fade away. Back to the model air chrome for the final ticks again, because we've pulled some blends across that, so we want to make sure that the model air chrome is still nice and bright. That's the stage that we're at now, and there you can see that's a better example of the striations on the sword, or the knife, as it were. We're just going back in with a little bit more Abaddon black, just to soften those transitions down again. But in a second you'll see the exposure just drop a little bit, so that you can see those striations a bit better. But they look pretty good there. You can see the transitions between the chrome all the way down to the very, very dark scale colour black metal. So now this is optional, you don't have to try and do this, but that the edge between the blade, the cutting blade part of the blade, and the back of the blade, we're just going to run a very, very quick model air chrome highlighter down that edge. It just helps separate those highlights and the light direction that's coming down and hitting the top of that blade. It just helps kind of carry that on and separate the two. And there we go. So you can now see, if I drop the exposure down, you can see how that metallic effect really works very well on the blade. So thank you very much, guys. That's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Next up, we are actually going to start doing, well, we're going to start and finish the freehand for the chapter symbol on that shoulder pad, so the Flesh Tearers chapter symbol. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe, and I will see you again in the next video. Thanks very much.